In this video, I'll be showing you 5 of the most insane crime twists in history. I'm sure you enjoyed the first ride. Let's dive right in. Number 5. What happens when your refuge endangers you the more? It's either danger or death. The former was exactly what happened to Candace Fonagy on October 31st, 1992. She had gone to a hospital in Kipling, Canada to talk to her friend after an argument with her boyfriend. Her friend was absent, but a nurse advised her to see one of the doctors because she was so agitated. She met with Dr. John Schneeberger, who told her taking a sedative would calm her down. She agreed and got an injection instead of a pill. And then, the feeling after was startling. She wasn't calmer, she was numb instead. Her memory afterwards went foggy, but when she came to it again, she felt something horrible had happened to her. If only she had known, she would have stayed in the argument with her boyfriend, because the doctor tried to replace him. She knew she had been assaulted by the doctor and went to the police to report with samples. Police found traces of semen as well as evidence of the drug the doctor had given her. The drug was then identified as the powerful anesthetic Versed, also known as midazolam, which induces sleepiness and decreases anxiety and consciousness, but inhibits the creation of new memories. Hence, it was the worst drug for such situations. It looked like Fonagy was right until the police approached Schneeberger, whose DNA didn't match the sample of the semen found in her. But a year later, a second sample was taken under police supervision, and more shockingly, this also didn't match. Schneeberger then falsely explained that Fonagy felt that way because the drug he gave her was occasionally known to cause hallucinations of sexual activity. Those who had believed Fonagy turned their backs and the police stopped investigating. She, however, hired a private investigator to get a sample of Schneeberger's DNA. After much efforts, the investigator laid his hands on Schneeberger's chapstick. This time, the DNA on his chapstick matched the one on the semen found on Fonagy. Again, Fonagy launched a civil trial and his DNA was to be retaken in front of witnesses. He only agreed to take samples from his arms and the sample lacked enough DNA for testing this time. Again, the case was dropped, never to be opened again. It ended sadly for Fonagy. But in 1997, Schneeberger's wife went to the police that he had been injecting and assaulting his daughter repeatedly. This time, the police went the extra mile. They took a sample from his finger and also from his hair. The results were baffling. The DNA matched the semen on Fonagy. So how come they were wrong all this time? If something was fishy, then what was it? Well, when he was tried in 1999, he admitted to have been evading giving a true sample by slicing open his arms and implanting a 15-centimeter Penrose drain into his arm. He filled the drain with blood he'd taken from a patient and would direct the police to the tube when they tried taking samples, hence extracting another man's blood. He added anticoagulants to keep the blood from degrading, and by the third sample, he had almost run out of blood. The reason why they struggled to get enough samples. He, however, denied assaulting Fonagy, claiming the semen found on her had been stolen from him after she took it from a used condom. Ridiculous. Gladly, no one agreed, and he was convicted of an obstruction of justice for the tube in his arm and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. But do you really think this sentence was enough? I think he deserved way more. Let's hear you out. Make your opinions known in the comments section. And now we move on to a story even more tragic and horrific in every aspect. It's the strangest love story ever. You could say death story anyways. Number 4. On October 17, 2006, the police arrived to find the fatally mangled body of 28-year-old Zachary Bowen, an Iraq war veteran who had jumped 5 stories to his death in a New Orleans hotel. Among many other things, they found a folded note in his pocket that read, "This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took. If you send a patrol to 826 North Rampart, you will find the dismembered corpse of my girlfriend, Addie, in the oven, on the stove, in the fridge, along with full documentation on the both of us." But that's not all. He had 28 cigarette burns, which, according to him, were to symbolize his shortcomings for every year of his life. He symbolized his pain by inflicting more pain? How symbolic. However, his friends claimed he appeared in fine spirits before his deadly jump. So what happened then? He'd been captured drinking and pacing endlessly before making his jump. Authorities immediately went to the address on Zach's note and they found every detail true. They had found cooked remains of a young woman suspected to be Zach's 30-year-old missing girlfriend, Addie Hall. Gory, right? But how did they meet? Zach had moved to New Orleans and enlisted in the army in 2000 and served in Kosovo and Iraq as a military policeman, earning several awards for his heroic bravery. Sadly, his experience in the army left him depressed and addicted to drugs and alcohol. After his discharge, he got bartending jobs and met Addie at a bar in 2005. They bonded and had a good time, both using copious amounts of drugs and alcohol. They fell in love and became dependent on each other. But then, Hurricane Katrina happened. The adamant couple resisted the evacuation and claimed they would ride out the storm from home, garnering media attention as a result. After the storm, they were without electricity, water, or any supplies. Though this initially brought them closer, many believed it was the beginning of Zach's downward spiral. Their world was soon crashing, and they resorted to fighting alongside physical and mental abuse. It was believed that things became worse when Zach began frequenting gay bars and entered a secret homosexual relationship, leading to Addie's dissatisfaction and an eventual breakup. Upon breaking up, they had more fights over the ownership of their shared apartment, and in the process, Zach snapped and strangled Addie to death. At the apartment, there were several strange messages and a confession sprayed on painted walls, where Zach claimed to feel no remorse for murdering Addie. In the oven, the police discovered a pair of charred feet and legs. In the stove, they found hands and a severed head in separate pots. In the refrigerator, they found a torso wrapped in a plastic bag. Guess what? Zach had done all of those. Making this more twisted was when Addie's best friend, Margaret Sanchez, who appeared as a narrator in the documentary Zach and Addie, was charged with murdering and dismembering a dancer alongside her boyfriend. While one of the two best friends were dismembered, the other was guilty of dismembering. You surely wouldn't want to leave it this time, as we've got more mind-blowing twists for you. Here's a story on how the neighbors one loves as oneself could harm one all by themselves. Number 3. On one weekend in May 2010, the family of Orange Coast College student Sam Herr became worried after he didn't make it home for the weekend. They called the phone of the 26-year-old Army veteran, but he didn't answer. His parents then decided to check his apartment in Costa Mesa, California. What they found inside was horribly unbelievable. A dead woman with a bullet wound in her head and ripped pants around her ankle was lying on Sam's bed. Wouldn't you honestly admit that you just thought of an assault? Well, let's move on. Sam's family, thinking Sam had been attacked and wounded as well, called the police. Sadly, the police didn't look for Sam as a missing person, but manhunted him as a wanted criminal who had the answers to the death of the woman on his bed. The young woman, a 23-year-old college student and dancer, Juri Kibuishi, was known by Sam's family, having been introduced to them by Sam, who saw her as a kid sister. The first lead came when they noticed a withdrawal through his ATM card. On apprehending the person taking out Sam's money, they found a 16-year-old, not Sam. Obviously, the teen was sent to take the money out for someone, but again, that someone wasn't Sam. So who was? It was Daniel Wozniak, a friend of Sam who was a community theater actor and lived next door to Sam. Daniel was then arrested while partying at his own bachelor party and claimed he had seen Sam leave his apartment with a man. But after hours of repeated denial, he opened up. He confessed he had killed Juri and also informed the police where Sam was. Eventually, Sam was found. His severed head was discovered dumped in bushes at the El Dorado Nature Center. He had been shot twice in the head by Daniel. Daniel had sought Sam's help in moving in some furniture around the theater, and while Sam helped, Daniel shot him, stealing his ATM card, wallet, and cell phone. To hide the evidence more, Daniel dismembered Sam's body with a hatchet and saw. But why did he do this? Daniel had no money. He needed money for his wedding, for his honeymoon, and even for his apartment rent. Innocently, Sam had once mentioned to him that he'd saved $62,000 from his combat pay from his service in Afghanistan, and Daniel began plans to steal his money. Juri headed over when she got a worrisome message from Sam, claiming he had family problems and needed a girl's shoulder to cry on. Daniel had lured her through Sam's phone. On getting there, Daniel shot her and staged her body to look like she'd been assaulted by Sam, all in an attempt to cover his tracks. In 2016, Daniel was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death, but is yet to be executed. Before we go on to the next, I'm sure you've already liked this video and subscribed to this channel before getting here. Well, if you've not, you can do that right now as we move on to a twist as mysterious as the tricks of a magician. Let's go. Clerk Etta Louise Smith was listening to a news when an inexplicable phenomenon happened to her. According to her, she had either a vision or psychic experience where she saw a woman's body laying somewhere on a remote hillside in Lopez Canyon, above Lakeview Terrace. She reported her psychic experience to the police and claimed she knew the location of Melanie's body. Though skeptical, the police tried to point out the speculated location on a map. She, however, headed home, picked up her 2 kids, and drove out to the spot, worried that the police might not take her seriously. After about 30 minutes of searching, Etta's daughter saw a nude, lifeless body on the ground. Immediately, Etta called the police to show them her discovery. And expectedly, it was Melanie Iribe. She'd been kidnapped, assaulted, and beaten. But Etta wasn't going to be excused so easily. It was shocking how the vision or psychic experience would have been so accurate and precise. Thinking she had some connections to Melanie's death, she was taken in for questioning. I mean, who wouldn't suspect her? She was kept there for 10 hours while she was being questioned, and then she was strip searched and left barefoot in a cell without food or water for 24 hours. They hoped she was going to open up on what she knew about the crime, but she knew nothing other than her vision. The next day after her vision, she was arrested on December 18th. While this went on, a man was boasting about how he'd robbed, beaten, and killed a woman. His claims were disturbing to his neighbors, who reported to the police. He was arrested 3 days after Etta, and when questioned, he implicated 2 other men in the crime. The 3 were an unarmed 17-year-old, 29-year-old Louis Carmel Morgan, and 21-year-old Spencer Nelson. They had jumped into her truck as she waited at a traffic light, forcing her to drive into Canyon, where they attacked, robbed, assaulted, and hit her in the head with a rock. Until the men confessed her face was strange, the police were sure Etta had some connections with the men. Nonetheless, the killers were all convicted and are serving sentences of up to life imprisonment. 6 years later, Etta sued the Los Angeles police for false arrest. She won her suit and was awarded $26,184. Etta's vision not only fished out criminals, it also brought her some good money. Sadly, that was the last vision to be heard of her. And now to the very first on the list, as viral and controversial as the most insane twist can be. Number 1. Events in November 2010 led to the most expansive manhunt in Italian history. One that involved the sampling of 18,000 DNA samples during investigation. A 13-year-old Yara Gamburazio, at around 5 p.m., headed out some few hundred meters from her house in Brembade di Sopra, Italy, to practice gymnastics, and never returned home afterwards. When her parents couldn't reach her after a few more hours, they called the police, who began the search immediately. She had messaged a friend after she was seen leaving the gym, and that was the last anyone heard from her. To investigate, bloodhounds followed Yara's scent away from her home and towards Mapello, where her phone rang last. Wiretappings were also done for hundreds of phones to trace who had been in Mapello and near Yara's home. After the wiretappings revealed a Moroccan man, Mohammed Fikri, saying, "Forgive me, God, I didn't kill her," Fikri was arrested. He was deemed suspicious. He boarded a boat to Tangier and had a blood-stained mattress in his possession. But he was soon released after it was realized he had been earlier mistranslated and the blood wasn't Yara's. There was nothing until 3 months later, when a man flying a radio-controlled airplane saw something strange among the weeds in the fields. A small pair of shoes. It was Yara's decomposed and frozen body. And conducting the autopsy was Italy's most famous forensic pathologist, who found that she had died from exposure after being attacked. She wasn't assaulted, but had several lacerations from sharp objects. There were traces of lime in her respiratory passages and vegetable fiber to make rope on her clothing, suggesting the attacker worked in construction. Eventually, a male's DNA sample was recovered from her underwear, leading to the conduction of thousands of DNA samples. The outcome of the investigation then linked a man, Damiano Girinoni, to Yara's death. But sadly, his DNA didn't match the sample exactly. He wasn't the killer, but was related to Yara's killer. The search was then expanded when it was discovered that Girinoni's father had 11 brothers and sisters. Girinoni's uncle, Giuseppe Girinoni, was aimed at, but he had died 11 years earlier. After getting his old documents and some stamps he's licked, it was found that Yara's killer was his son. Yet, both his sons didn't match the DNA, and they were childless too. The easy answer was that Giuseppe must have had an illegitimate child. His body was exhumed for more certainty, and it was confirmed. Investigation soon started with the aim of uncovering Giuseppe's affair about 30 to 40 years earlier. A tip came from one of Giuseppe's friends at his workplace, who claimed Giuseppe had gotten a woman in trouble in the 70s or 80s. Her name was Esther Arzuffi. And though Esther's DNA had already been tested, it was discovered that her DNA was wrongly tested against Yara's and not the suspect's. Esther denied having an affair with Giuseppe, claiming her twins, a boy and a girl, weren't his. Her 43-year-old son was named Massimo Giuseppe Rossetti, with his middle name raising more and more questions. Massimo was a builder and lived in Mapello. Interestingly, he worked in construction, explaining the lime on Yara's body. The police set up a fake roadblock for breathalyzing and took 2 DNA samples from Massimo. He was Giuseppe's biological son and an exact match to Yara's killer. He was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment for her murder. However, his mother, Esther, still denies ever having an affair with Giuseppe, claiming the whole thing is inexplicable. What do you predict here? Could she be saying the truth? Well, we're halfway already, and before you continue, if you've enjoyed this video so far, I'd like you to hit the like button and get into the comments section to let us know which story is most intriguing. And that's all on the second part of the most insane crime scripts in history. If you enjoyed watching this video, kindly hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more interesting crime videos like this. I'm sure you wouldn't want to miss them. Until then, peace out.